Welcome one and all to this webinar on the topic of peer mediation. It is a pleasure to have so many of you joining us today. For those of you who are new, I would like to start by saying a little bit more about Mediate Guru. Mediate Guru is a social initiative led by members across the globe. The aim of the organization is to bridge the gap between the general public and education. We are creating a social awareness campaign for showcasing mediation as the future. Having successfully conducted various international webinars promoting alternative dispute resolution, having reached more than 100 countries around the world with an international family growing each day. We thrive to provide you the best lecture series through the best speakers around the globe so that you can add value to your legal studies and your legal career. And I feel honored today to welcome our esteemed speaker for today's webinar, Mr. Will Chalmers. Will obtained his Bachelor's of Laws from the University of Surrey and has a background in both the legal and education sectors. During this time, Will built up a free-to-use regional legal advice service with in both the legal and education sectors. During this time, with 70+ lawyers, which helped more than 1,000 people per year with legal advice and guidance. Since then, Will has become the founder and CEO of Mediator Network. He's a leader in the mediation services space, having built a global professional network of mediators. Will is driven by the need to better educate the public about mediation and encourages as many people as possible to use this form of dispute resolution. Mediator Network supports mediators with business development, peer support, promotional activities, and professional support services. During his time as CEO, Will has brought platforms and activities such as Find a Mediator, better peer support, and simplified access to mediation services across the globe. Will is currently organizing International Mediation Awareness Week and looking for volunteers to assist him in delivering this. Find out how you can get involved at www.imaw.org/get-involved. I now request the speaker to take the session forward and enlighten us all. You all can ask your questions in the chat box.
Thank you for that introduction, Mal. That's absolutely wonderful. Let's just upload this presentation again because it seems to have been knocked off from the one we had currently. But thank you very much for that. It's a different time for everybody here, so thank you for joining us today. Just going to upload this now, and then we can get going. So yeah, today really is a session to talk about peer mediation, and Mediator Network is very excited to be part of this session. And I hear a lot of really good things about Mediate Guru and such a thriving community. So a bit of background about me and the network, just to say that, on top of what's just been shared with you already, we are really predominantly here to promote mediation. The initiatives that were mentioned, including International Mediation Awareness Week, are such that invites the entire community in the dispute resolution sector to get together. So the attendees on this particular session are all invited, all of you are invited to be part of that week in November. Whilst we're waiting for the slides to load, can we maybe just do the first poll, please?
We're currently awaiting the results of the poll. It seems that the majority are law students, with about 65%. We have a few lawyers with us today as well, with approximately 20%, and some mediators with approximately 15%, and some other professionals.
Fantastic, thank you for that. So we've got a heavy following of law students, which is absolutely fantastic. And in terms of professionals, it's really good to see some mediators and non-mediators here as well. The purpose of these sessions is obviously to bring some added value to what's going on, and so everyone takes away something from this today. Before we get started, the slides are still loading. This thing takes a little bit of time. But let's just see what we know about mediation. Now, I'm assuming our mediators on this call will absolutely understand this, and the lawyers probably will do as well. But if we could just start the second poll, please. And this is about what we think mediation is actually from our own point of view. Excellent, that's wonderful. So I'm now going to start the presentation whilst the polls are being completed. Okay, so I like to make these things as interactive as possible. I appreciate that we can't have any auditory or direct communication, so please use the chat function, the chat box, to put questions, thoughts, comments, responses in here. There'll be some points where I'll ask for your input and your feedback, so if you could use that, and then we can sort of engage on that basis. So, peer mediation. What are we going to talk about today? For those of you that don't know or want a little bit more of an explanation, what actually is mediation? And the core skills and traits of a mediator, what it is that makes an excellent mediator, somebody even without the training, having gone through formal training processes, what are those skills and attributes? Then we'll have a look at what peer mediation is, what it means, why it's important, and then explore together how that works where you are currently, and the impact of that and how you can make a difference as well. And then we'll look into whether there's any training or what you can do to enhance the skills, the offering that you've got in terms of helping those around you. So first question for the attendees, for everyone out there, and mediators, you can chip in as well, please do, and anyone else that knows about it. So what do we think mediation actually is? Has anybody got any ideas about what we think mediation is? I think I can see the results coming through. I think we're all tending to lean towards a conversation, yeah. And some thought process over a legal process. That's excellent. So mediation is a very interesting way of resolving things, and I think the polls are they coming to a close now. People still putting things in, but essentially it is exactly as most of us are thinking. It's an assisted conversation. I love the use of the term conversation. A good friend of mine, Kathleen Leedy, would also always describe it as a conversation. And the purpose of mediation, or its roots, I suggest, come back from many centuries ago. And it really is a way of somebody neutral assisting two or more people to have a conversation or negotiate something. And that person will not impose their own viewpoint or make decisions or get involved in that decision-making process. So it's really important to remember that from a mediator's point of view, you're actually helping facilitate a conversation. And it's not a legal process per se. It doesn't form part of a legal system. In some countries, it does form procedurally part of a process, but it's not where a judge jumps in and makes a decision. And it's not where a third party jumps in and makes a decision, unless, of course, and there are machinations of this, there is evaluative mediation as opposed to facilitative mediation. But what we're talking about in terms of peer mediation is where people are fighting, there's some conflict, and there's some issues that need to be resolved. You, in your capacity as a friend, a colleague, a contact, may be able to support those individuals. And what you're doing effectively is having a conversation, allowing them to talk. So there's a neutral professional normally in terms of mediation, and that mediator normally has done some training and completed a certificate of qualification of some description. But lots of professionals do what we call soft mediation. So they are naturally invited to be part of a process because of their natural skills and core traits. But the aim of mediation isn't outcome focused. It is sort of looking at what the parties want and moving people forward. That's very different because it's more dynamic than an outcome predicated by a legal process or legal principles. So two or more people can have very different views as to what they want to achieve, but if they're happy to agree those things between them, and as long as it's not illegal, so to speak, it doesn't cause harm, then those two people can actually agree on those points themselves. So it's very different to litigation because you're not submitting evidence, you're not talking to a judge or arbitrator or similar entity and trying to convince them of a position necessarily. Instead, you use the information to move forward. What's going to help you to have an open and frank conversation, and as long as everyone acts in good faith, it's normally very successful. I think rates in the UK, certainly last CEDA stats, were about 90% success rate. And it is the general sort of feeling is it's quicker and less expensive than going through the litigation process. Excuse me. But that's simply because when parties are ready to go, it can take a day or maybe a couple of days if it's very complex. But normally we can schedule a few hours or up to a day, and the parties will get to a certain position, and there may be full outcomes reached, partial outcomes reached, or having moved them forward in some way, shape or form. Whereas waiting to go through a court process, for example, can take some months and years at the moment, especially with current situation. And it's entirely confidential. When you go through court procedures, records are public. But this is a very confidential process, so it's very good for organisations and individuals who want to keep reputations intact, and if they're trying to continue with the relationship of the third parties, and they don't want this dispute to be open to them, or for them to realise that there's some issues underlying with other organisations or individuals. It's confidential, which is a very powerful way to sell this sort of concept to people, because they can have their conversation and agree some outcomes, and nobody needs to know about what the extent or the details of that conversation were. So the next question really is, and there isn't a poll for this, so please put your answers in the chat function, the chat box. We'll have a look at those. But the question now is, what do we think are the essential skills or characteristics, traits which make a good mediator? Not necessarily the qualification side of it, but what do you think a person needs to hold valuable traits to make them good naturally at being a mediator? Has anybody got any ideas? Yeah, communication skills. Yes, very good. Listening skills, excellent. Yeah. Yep, listening and speaking skills, patience, very good. Good body language, it's a very good point. Understanding feelings, yeah. Persuasion, yeah. Six hats, I like that. That's very good. Understanding, very good. Active listening, yeah. Making things simple and straight, yeah. Perseverance, neutrality, very good. It's wonderful. Well done. I think we're all kind of on the right lines there, absolutely. So these are some of the sort of things, I suppose, that we feel make a good mediator. And of course, we can always add to this list. Absolutely. Yeah, the potential, presence of mind, dialogue methods, optimistic, objective listening, smart decision making. Very good. Okay, so really what we're looking at here are a combination of these things. So we've had these kind of thoughts through the chat, but impartiality is very important. It's that neutral point. Being confidential in your approach and professional. Communication is a massive point here. Yes, active listening. I think somebody's put it in the chat as well. Active listening and that ability to understand what's being said. And sometimes it's cutting to the chase, and sometimes it's reading the subtext of what's not being said effectively, as opposed to what's verbally being said to you. And the body language thing is very important. And on following on from that is when people say things with emotion, sometimes because it's heated, that you want to rephrase what's being said. So a mediator is normally very good at rephrasing and reframing what somebody is saying emotively, and putting it into something more objective. Okay, so nice and clear. So clarity, making sure that people are clear about what's going on, without imparting, of course, their own opinions and views and words, not mixing up that words that the individuals are using, but of course making sure that that's conveyed clearly to the other side without having all the emotion attached to it as well. Patience is a very good point here. Patience, really, because these things, and we've dealt with many of them, can take a long time, but also some situations are very sensitive, very complex, and so a mediator needs to be able to listen, absorb information, allow the individuals to vent and share their anxieties and concerns, and be able to then allow the process to move forward. And yes, so summarizing and being unbiased has come through the chat as well. Also, therefore, being people-focused. That's an umbrella term in terms of everything that you would put down, rather than a process-focused person or a principle-focused person, which is a combination of those things. But essentially, when you put the people in at the heart of the issues and the driving them forward, you start to see what's really important, and you start to help them see what's really important. And a helpful disposition, you want to help them get to some outcome or move them forward in some way or shape or form. It's really about putting them first, and that leads on from people-focused situation. And being non-judgmental is very, very important. It's very clear that if you're the differentiator, I suppose, from an arbitrator or judiciary or adjudicator sort of position or expert determiner, will be that they are reviewing a situation, making judgments on the information that they have in front of them, and they're making a decision, basically. So non-judgmental mentality is so important, okay, to make sure that you're listening fairly, equally, giving everybody a fair chance to put their thoughts and feelings forward, and then helping them to move forward together. So we're now moving on to this whole subject, which is what we're talking about today, is peer mediation. Peer mediation is something that is happening already in different parts of the world, in different ways. So I think what I'd like to do now is again ask for the audience, the attendees, to share your thoughts on what you think peer mediation is, as a process, as a resource. Does anyone have any ideas of what we think peer mediation may be?
There's just a slight lag, Will. I think we are getting some responses through.
That's fine, thank you. School students has come through. Thanks, Neha. Yeah. Yeah, so bringing people together with that litigation process. Yeah. Teaching skills, absolutely. Managing conflict is such an important thing for you as an individual, as all of us as individuals. Resolving conflict through negotiation, yes. It's wonderful. Okay, so problem solving by using skills, absolutely. So peer mediation can take one of two sort of routes. So in an informal setting, at its basic level, it's people like you and I helping the people around us resolve conflict, disputes, and quibbles and things. And you may see this anyway in your community because you may have a group of friends or colleagues who may fall out. They've had an argument, a spat or something, and there's somebody often in the middle who will try and diffuse the situation. Now, if they use the right skills, they will then help manage the de-escalation process and help the individuals understand what exactly are the issues and then help them see the other person's side of the picture, the problem as well. Okay, so in an informal setting, these people, without having any formal training, have, of course, got the natural skills and traits we were just talking about to allow them to fulfill that function. And you normally have an inherent person in your group, whether that's to say it's at school, at university, college, whatever, or in fact in the workplace, that there is normally a character, a person that will take on that role. And that person will then want to be more involved in helping make sure that there is no conflict, because they don't like conflict, and they want to make sure, of course, that everyone is happy, and so those things will come to them naturally. And then there's a bit more formal things that can happen. So the formal element of that is, and Vash has just put that in there, is exactly right. So we actually can have a scheme, a resource to work with practitioner mediators, so people that have done the training and qualifications, to facilitate peers, groups of individuals in communities. So you manage the mediation under supervision, but those people that are in the community who are being supervised are nominated people. Phoebe, for example, is a nominated, which is not, but just for as an example, is a nominated mediator for everyone at her university, which means that if there's a conflict or dispute, they'll go to Phoebe first, see if they can resolve it between them. Phoebe would work with, say, one of our mediators or somebody from Mediate Guru, and actually what they will then do is help ensure that problem is resolved as best as possible using the resources that you've got available. But at all stages, whoever is helping, they must remain neutral. They can't take sides, and it's really important that we look at language and communication and all those kind of things that are important to ensure that you have fairness, equality, and that each person feels that they're being heard and they can move forward together. It's quite a bit of a skill set needed and some training and support with that. But peer mediation in its kind of basic form is exactly that. So you're looking at a group, a community, a setting where you have somebody, whether they're trained or not, to be a go-to person, and that person will be supported to ensure that at the same level of those people, so it's a group of students, for example, another student is there to be that peer-to-peer mediator. What often happens with before you get to mediation, is that you may have conversations about ways to do things, and that's triaging. And lots of mediations don't materialize because the great work that the mediator does is to help parties understand what the issues are and how to resolve the conflict themselves. And so what we aspire to have is an educational aspect to our mediation practice, which means that you can share that information with those that are going through problems to help them find better ways of dealing with it themselves, and then avoids them having to escalate the problem and seek more formal support elsewhere. But in order to facilitate that, those people doing the mediation function will need to be given the information, advice and guidance, and of course be able to be supported by somebody senior. So where does this happen? You know, we've got a number of people from different establishments here today, different backgrounds. It can happen everywhere and anywhere. We've put a couple of examples here. So educational establishments such as university. That's a clear example where that does happen, and students doing various things. We're working with a couple of colleges at the moment to embed a peer mediation scheme, and that is where the mediation takes place on campus, and we have our senior mediators to support them doing the mediation work. And by doing that, those individuals have added value because the students who are being the mediator and supporting the process are learning how to resolve and help their peers, but also the peers are learning how to self-resolve and better communicate and use better language and understand a process they can follow, which then is a toolkit that you build going through life. And that's the important bit, is that we're trying to share really a new level of education about how to manage conflict when it arises, avoid it escalating, and deal with things more positively. So it happens anywhere, and you can probably find that conflict happens in your home, and you may find that your nan or your granddad or your mum or your dad will step in when siblings fall out, for example. Sometimes that's not mediation, sometimes that's just a decision-making situation, but sometimes they will ask who wants what and how you're going to divide things, and have you got any thoughts, and brother to sister, have you, and share and be kind, and that's you being encouraged to think in the same way as you would be through a formal mediation process. So peer mediation is exactly that. Okay, so really it's about understanding what role you're going to play. Can you be neutral? Can you uphold the skills of a mediator? Okay, and then use those skills to support people who are going through conflict. And if you don't think mediation is suitable, do you know how to help them self-resolve all the next steps that they can take? So how does it work? And it kind of goes through a process. And so before I give you some my thoughts, has anybody got any thoughts about what they think mediation is in a peer setting, how it kind of works on a localized level? Has anyone got any thoughts on that? So to help you out a little bit here, whilst we're waiting for some excellent feedback coming through. So we've gone through some things, yes, between educational institutions and people, yes. But how does it work? What are the mechanics? What do you think we need to do to make it work? Are there any procedural things or paperwork things that a peer mediator may also need to consider? Yeah, conflicts between friends, it's applicable here, yeah. Conversations, absolutely. I think I can hear the cogs turning in terms of, I could just be my internet, I suppose. Counselling, yeah. Be more approachable, yes. Consent, very important point. Yeah, with parents, children, family conflict. Lots going through about family, absolutely spot on, yeah. Yes, Umang, absolutely right. So peer mediation require, well, the mediators sort of require similar skills. Sorry, yep. In the office, friends, nations over dispute. Yes, absolutely. The UN, yeah. Work. Good point, Varsha, about the professor getting involved. Non-interest of the mediator. That's an interesting point. Yeah. Maybe Sakiri could elaborate on that a little bit. Partition of property. Yeah. Yeah, and a resident welfare group. Excellent. Okay. So these are all really good examples of mediation working where we are, which is really, really excellent. And for that to actually happen, we need to think of some things, some safeguards, some principles that we need to sort of put in place. So if you were to act as a mediator without having the formal skills and training, then what should we do to help? And we're not talking about the extensive skill set that a mediator should require, but yes, those are important as well, those skills. But basically, it works a little bit like this. So you need to be approachable. Somebody said this in the chat as well. The aim really is to start a conversation. It's not to make a decision, not to get to an endpoint, it's to start a conversation. And if whoever it is, so if you're not the mediator, but you're looking for someone to help you, you need to find someone who's going to be neutral and trusted, and who you feel won't therefore take one side over another. So you may not want another family member if it's two brothers falling out, for example. You may want some third party outside the process to come in and assist you with something. In a student setting, you may have a group of friends and somebody who you know as within that group is very reliable in terms of sensible conversation facilitation that can help people understand what the issues are, and therefore that person might be more suitable. When you have a conversation, and we have to set the parameters, and the parameters does include basically the consent element, but also the time element, the issues to be discussed, and what you've got to look for. So what are the aims and objectives as a result of the discussion? And then the framework around that. So if you don't agree something, next, what is going to be the thing you need to talk about? Or what are the action points as a result of not agreeing something or agreeing things? Confidentiality through mediation is an absolute essential point here. So people that come to you as a mediator, if that's the role that you're taking, then make sure that you do keep everything confidential, and you share that, and you make it clear that everything will remain confidential as a result of this process. As a mediator, if you're going to write some things down, you can jot notes down, but don't make records of the conversations. Parties, people involved in the dispute, are welcome to make notes, but again, only really write down what the actions are for everyone to move forward, and make it clear as to when things will happen, and if certain things don't happen, what the outcomes are going to be. Hold the conversation in a neutral place. Of course, with pandemic and global things going on at the moment, most things can be taken online, and so you can use these different platforms such as Zoom to have a video chat, or by the telephone, or if you're going to have a conversation in person, make sure it's not in view of other people, and make sure that it's a nice neutral space where everyone feels comfortable to hold those conversations. Make sure you set time limits. So we'll have a couple of hours conversation, and that's it. If we want more time, we'll then have another hour, or we'll schedule that as a result of this particular session. And if you're having outcomes, then make sure that all of that is very clear as well. So parties know, people know what they've got to do when they've got to do it by. If you're preparing for something and you're acting as mediator, of course, you may want to read some things to help you, to assist the parties. If there's stuff for you to read, you're going to want some time to do that. So don't leave things to the last minute. So make sure you make that clear as well. In a workplace setting, or in a university setting, for example, it's going to be less formalistic than this. So it's really about that conversation. It's really about putting the context into where you actually are. So if you are in a university setting and it's a peer-to-peer mediation amongst friends, of course, it's about making sure that if you're going to help the parties, help them feel confident. You are supporting them in a neutral way, in a neutral space, allowing them to vent and share those things with you confidentially. Somebody mentioned about the professor getting involved at that level. Well, this is a sort of a form of peer mediation. When we talk about peer mediation, we're really talking about the same level of people, same group of people getting together, helping each other out. So the professor can get involved and mediate between students. That's fine, but they wouldn't be there to make decisions on the basis of what they've heard. So it's really important that you have, maybe the structure would be the professor would be the person that supervises the peer mediation process, but students are there dealing with that mediation aspect. And of course, it's very important that you do stay out of the decision-making process. You're not imparting your views and opinions. You're not deciding outcomes for people. Even if you don't agree with the outcomes they want, that doesn't matter. The point is that they've agreed these things, and they will then write that down, and then you will have helped them move forward in some way, shape, or form. There was a question in the chat about training for peer mediation. So we're going to have a look at that now. But this is a really short point, because there are organisations, and we're working with a couple of organisations on peer mediation. We want to explore this. We want to put some training together. So this is an opportunity to get in contact with yourselves as well. If you're interested in training, doing some sessions on peer mediation, we would be delighted to talk to Mediate Guru more formally about that and see if there's something we can do together. But essentially, what do you need to do in order to be a peer mediator? What is it that's really, really important? So, as I said, we're putting some training together anyway, because we're quite passionate about peer mediation, and it kind of will take you to the next level of skill set. So it's not formal mediation training, but it is training that helps you navigate through conflict and helps you with a basic framework of what to ask and when to ask, the particular question types, how to rephrase things, how to understand things, and then having a support network of senior practitioners, supervising the entire process. And it means that you're there ready to go in your community, and you could be nominated person and know that you're working with two substantive organisations who can actually support you in fulfilling that function. And it becomes a bit of a recognised thing which you can put on your CV as well, and you take through with you through life. So this is something that we want to advocate. We want to encourage students, lawyers, other professionals, everyone to get involved with, even qualified mediators, of course, as well, because we need people who will be interested in supporting the process. And I think two organisations such as Mediator Network and Mediate Guru working together would be a really good collaboration where we could all actually achieve in this particular space. There's a lot of things that we can achieve in a short space of time if we all come together. So we're quite keen on that. So if that's something of interest, this is a bit of a plug really, because of course this is something we want to explore together. If it's of interest, we'll have a chat with Mediate Guru team, and then of course we can talk to everyone about how we move forward. But if you want to sort of ask more about it, then drop us a line via that info email address. So that brings me to the end of the conversation today. We've gone through quite a lot. So we've looked at what mediation is. We have looked at what peer mediation is, the core skills and traits of a mediator, whether you're skilled, qualified as one or not, which means you can take those skills into your community, whatever that setup is, and we can talk about those conversational aspects, and being better equipped with those skills, those traits. It will help you to facilitate more positive discussions and to help the people around you self-resolve those problems. There's lots of things going on with Mediator Network, and the International Week was mentioned earlier. Just a little sort of thing on that one. Basically, everybody should be involved with this. Students and everybody involved in terms of mediation, dispute resolution, because this is a platform in November to put it on the global stage. So have a look at the link there, the imaw.org link. You can check out more about what we do as a network as well. And there's lots of things happening. So do join us, do get involved. Now, that's enough of me rambling on for 45 minutes. I see there's some questions that have come up. So should we go through those now and then open the floor, basically?
Apologies, everyone. I think there has been some connectivity issues with Mr. Will. He'll be rejoining us soon.
Will, are you with us?
Sorry, apologies.
That's all right.
Apologies. I think I clicked the wrong button. Here we go. Right. Okay, there we go. Right, so now, good job I'm not running the session, isn't it? Right, so chat function. And I've lost the chat, so do you want to lead this for me? And then
yes, definitely will. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So we have a few questions from our audience. The first question is, what are the differences and similarities between mediation and arbitration?
Very good question. Mediation is a form of dispute resolution which is party-centric, and it's where you empower the parties to make the decisions themselves. Arbitration is a decision-making process where a third party will make that decision for those involved. There's less discussion, less empowerment of those to make decisions. In fact, there's very little. And actually, mediation is suitable for where people may want to continue a relationship and talk with each other. Arbitration is like going to court, but a little bit quicker and less resource heavy, but it is similar to going to court.
Thank you very much, Will. The second question is, what is the first step in learning to be a peer mediator?
So learning to be a peer mediator, I think first is recognizing if that's something you want to get involved with. We're developing a training program, which I want to talk to Mediate Guru about. And so we will have that conversation, and then more information will be made available eventually on that basis. So I would suggest that do one of two things: either email us directly at the info@ email address, and we'll register your information. Alternatively, contact Mediate Guru, say you're interested, and then we can pick up that conversation afterwards.
So the next question is, what's the weight of a party's consent to a mediation process?
Consent to the process is essential. Mediation is a voluntary process in as much as you need to have everybody involved giving consent to have the discussion and make the decisions. If the people involved in the mediation are representing others, then they need to have the consent and authority to make decisions for and on behalf of them around them. So in a peer mediation setting, if there's a group of friends or a group of residents or a group of colleagues that will be impacted by this, and you're having one representative attend the session, then consent of all those involved needs to be given, and the authority for that one person to make a decision, to make it binding at the session, is essential.
Thank you very much. The next question is the verdict of mediation binding absolutely to the exclusion of court?
Nothing's exclusive of going to court. Parties still have their legal authority, and the principles of law can still be applied. Mediation, however, sits in a box to say that you've got an opportunity to have a confidential discussion. Whatever you decide between you is legally binding in terms of if you have it signed between you, which you should do as a result of the process, contract law. If you decide to have it go through the legal process as a result of that, you can have a consent order, and that then is rubber stamping by the court to recognise that as a court approved outcome, but it doesn't have the court process. It means it's actually gone through, been recognised. But of course, if you go through the court process, you're going through litigation, you cannot reference the content of your mediation. So that's why it still remains confidential. Okay, so it's legally binding in terms of contract law principles. And then if you have a consent order through the court process, then it does become legally binding on the parties and recognised in that way and enforceable. It's enforceability point, which is important for consent orders.
Okay, and the last question is, are there any unique challenges involved in peer mediation as opposed to standard mediation?
The challenges for peer mediation are very similar to normal mediation. You need to have those around you engaged and to give consent and want to sort of enter into the process. As a peer mediator, you're then further challenged by not having the formal skills training as a mediator, but with the support of senior practitioners, actually it becomes a lot easier because you become part of a process, you learn a lot of skills along the way, so the challenges become opportunities. That's how I see it anyway.
Well, I think that is all for the questions today, Mr. Will. Thank you very much for such a vibrant, interactive, and knowledgeable session. I am sure we all got to learn some amazing things today. And I would also like to thank you all, the participants, for joining us. And before concluding today's session, I would just like to take the opportunity to introduce the International Arbitration Moot Competition of 2021 that will be hosted by Mediate Guru this upcoming September. The registrations are open for arbitration enthusiasts from all across the globe. It will be a landmark opportunity to learn the practicals, insights of arbitration. For more information, don't forget to visit www.mediateguru.com. And I would request everyone to please fill up the feedback form before you leave in order to receive your certificates. If you don't want to miss any updates from Mediate Guru, follow us on our social media handles and also join the WhatsApp updates group sent in the chat box. Stay healthy, stay safe, and see you all very soon. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for attending. Thank you for the opportunities. Brilliant.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Will.
Thank you. Take care.